Good morning, John. Happy Movember.
Good morning. Happy Movember to you.
You're obviously the ultimate spokesman for the job.
I'm calling myself the patron saint of facial hair, of mustache hair.
That's actually in your press release.
I know. I came up with that and I thought it was cute, so I figured I'd leave it in.
How did you become the patron saint of facial hair?
Well, I'm a self-anointed patron saint. First of all, we have to make that very clear. No one has actually conferred that on me yet. I remember when I first spoke to the Movember people when we started talking about being involved. First thing I jokingly said was, I guess Burt Reynolds wasn't available. Huh? So, I do have a wry sense of humor.
You're in the Mustache Hall of Fame, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I kind of liken when you shaved your mustache off to kind of like when Metallica cut all their hair off. Like, people were shocked.
It's just one of those things. I don't know. I grew a mustache as soon as I graduated from high school. I guess I was destined to have a mustache somehow or another. Maybe I didn't like the way my lip looked. Who knows? There's always a lot of deep-seated hidden meanings behind things like that. But, it became a thing. And then, interestingly enough, I felt like I became a caricature of myself. And the mustache was kind of representative of that. In the early actually late 80s, I just decided it was time. I needed to change. There was a lot going on in my life, a lot of stress-induced things and mental things, emotional things I was dealing with. And the mustache, in a way, represented the old guy that I was, and I didn't want to be that guy anymore. So I shaved it off. I spent the entire decade of the 90s into the 2000s totally clean shaven. I felt like I was reborn in a sense. It was kind of a cathartic shedding of the skin type thing.
Can I ask a little bit more about the moment when you ritualistically shaved off the mustache?
Oh, it's kind of it's a good story. Every time I looked at myself during this period of time, the mustache started looking weird to me. It just didn't look good. It looked strange. Yoko Ono invited Daryl and I, plus a lot of other artists, to perform in Tokyo for a John Lennon tribute on the 10th anniversary of his death. And after the show, I came back to the room and I just looked at myself in the mirror and it had to go. I don't know what it was. I just said, this is it, I'm done. And I shaved it off in the hotel room in Tokyo. And it was funny. It was funny because the next day I walked into the airport and there's everybody, and Daryl, he did a double take. He's like, what did you do? And then Miles Davis, I mean, if you ever saw him up close, he's a very powerful, he has these penetrating eyes. And he came right up to me, literally came right up to my face like this. And he went like this, he went. And I went, yeah. And he was like, and that was it. He walked away. I don't know whether that was approval or recognition. I have no idea. It was a moment.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the serious stuff. Like I said, you're the ultimate spokesperson for the job of Movember. So obviously the movement pertains a lot to men's cancers, testicular cancer, prostate cancer, but also mental health, which I do think is a very serious thing among men because, men have, especially I imagine you from your generation, been taught to, no pun intended, keep a stiff upper lip, mustachioed or otherwise.
I think things have changed, especially in a younger generation. Men, hell, in the past and even now, men don't even want to go to the doctor, much less than talk about, very deep-seated anxieties and stress and mental health. Although I see with the younger generation, there's a major change, especially see it with athletes, sports figures, performers. They are talking about mental health. They're very much more open about it.
So I definitely want to talk about mental health with you because you've been opening up about it while you're talking about your involvement with this cause. And it maybe all sort of is connected to this ritualistic mustache shaving you had years ago, but why don't you tell me what you were going through or what you have gone through?
Back at the end of the 80s, there was a number of things happening. One is that Daryl and I, we had achieved such a high level of pop success. We were everywhere, and it was very, very intense period of time. And people always say, well, they kind of assume that the 80s, because we were so popular with all these hit singles, et cetera, that I must have been on, just on cloud nine, riding high and loving every minute of it. But exact opposite was true. It wasn't a very good time for me. I felt like I was being pulled in all sorts of directions. I had no time for myself. I kind of, reacted by doing other things. But then by the end of the 80s, something much more serious happened. I was getting divorced. I was getting separated. Also, our manager had moved on, had stopped managing us. And Daryl and I felt like we had really reached the mountaintop and there was nowhere to go but down. So we basically stopped touring. So there was this whole a whole sea change of things that I was handling. And things got really weird. I had some money issues with investments and things like that not being handled for me by people that I had trusted. And so it was a very, very stressful period of time. And my reaction to it, the initial reaction was, of course, to shave the mustache, but that was always symbolic. What I really had to do was I had to change my life. The music business had kind of kicked me in the ass. And I got to the point where I had some come to Jesus moments with accountants who told me, "Hey, you got a lot of stuff, but you don't have, don't have much in the bank," and that's what caused me to basically sell everything and start over. But the real thing that happened was that on my way back from one of these come to Jesus meetings, I was in a cab and it was late at night, and I was driving back from Wall Street toward my apartment in the Village, and I started getting chest pains, and I thought I was having a heart attack. And I had never had experienced anything like that in my life. I was still a fairly young guy. And it was really frightening. And I thought, I'm going to die in the back of a cab on my own at night in New York City. And I thought I couldn't think of a worse scenario. And it really pissed me off. Spoiler alert, I didn't die. Just want to make sure it's clear. And literally the following morning is when I began to sell everything I had. And luckily it was the 80s and people had a lot of money and wanted to buy stuff. I sold everything and I moved into my little condo, the only thing I didn't sell, in Aspen, Colorado, and I lived in the mountains for 2 years. I didn't have a car, I rode my bike, I skied every day, and I just became a mountain man, and I just left the music business behind. So that was a step in the direction of reinventing myself and rebuilding my life. It's very, very similar to the shaving of the mustache in a symbolic way. It was the symbolism of getting rid of the trappings of the pop star. The fancy cars, the big houses in Connecticut, the apartments in New York. I had a lot of stuff, and it was almost like it was really just get rid of it all because you don't need it and start over again. So then when I did come back to music in the early 2000s, I really came back with a different perspective. I'd re-identified myself, I think. And so I guess if you say shaving the mustache was a step in that direction, it was. I went to therapy for the first time, which I had always scoffed at, who needs therapy? That's for weaklings or whatever, or people who can't handle their own shit, But it actually became it was a really revelatory thing for me. I began to see myself in a different light outside of the image that I was perceived as. Hey, I'm not just this MTV guy who jumps around in funny clothes, I'm so much more centered and so much more at ease with myself that, let's put it this way, the mustache is not defining me. But now it is important because I've aligned myself with Movember, and it's the whole thing. I mean, it is what it is.
Got to keep on pushing uphill when it rolls back down to zero.
Rather than, I'm not running away from anything. I said, you know what, why not embrace it for a good cause? I just said, okay, I'm going to let this thing grow out and see what happens. I can't represent without a substantial stash, as they would say.
Are you going to keep this look after Movember's over? Or are you going to shave it again?
I'm going to keep it for a while. I'm going to see how it fits on my face after a while. It's like an old jacket, it's you wear it for a while and then all of a sudden you want a new jacket. So you never know.
Did it trigger any memories for you?
Other than the fact there's a lot more gray in it. Yeah, it triggered a lot of memories. It's weird. I've got there's something about the right side of the stash that splits in half every once in a while. And I remember that from when I was younger. And also when you eat, sometimes if you eat a sandwich, you can pull your mustache, you can pull your upper lip down along with the sandwich, which is something I've also forgot about, which I'm noticing again now that it's kind of growing longer. Oh yeah, there's a couple little things. Now there's like mustache and beard products for men. I mean, come on, in the 70s and 80s, no one would even imagine. Oh, now there's like beard balm and mustache brushes and all these like cool little accoutrements. I'm
kind of feeling like there's a marketing spokesperson opportunity there for you for the taking.
Oats balm.
Made with actual oats, which is soothing to the skin. You are the patron saint of facial hair after all. You have a reputation to uphold.
There you go.